So when when he says, but I say, he never says, forget about what you heard. It's really not that tough. He always says, hey, if you hate your brother, that's the same as, you've heard it said, do not murder. But hey, if you hate your brother, same as murder, or do not commit adultery. Hey, if you think of a woman with lust, you've committed adultery in your heart already. So he's always tightening it up. So when you see him repeating it, you have to pay attention. If you can, or I'll just read it, but if you can turn to Matthew 18. Yeah. Now, remember, we're in Matthew 6, so 18's further along. I don't know what the time frame is. In fact, I was going to try to look up the time frame, but then I forgot. I don't know if it's, 3 days later, 6 months later, after the sermon, on the Mount. But so in Matthew 18, starting in verse 21, then Peter came up and said to him, now, Peter, he's on that inner circle of the, top 3 guys there, followers of Christ. And now he's got this question for Jesus. Remember, we just had the Sermon on the Mount, about forgiveness. And Peter came and said to him, Lord, how often will my brother sin against me and I forgive him? As many as 7 times? So he's got trying to figure this out. I mean, is there a limit? Jesus just got done saying, if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive you your trespasses. Peter wants to find out what the limit of that is. Okay, let's negotiate. Is it 7 times? I mean, 7's probably a lot of times. I mean, how many times are you going to let somebody mess with you over and over before you're not going to forgive them anymore? You just say, that's it. And Jesus said to him, I do not say to you 7 times, but 77 times. Again, he's saying, no, what's the 7 times? I'm telling you a whole bunch of times. I'm telling you an infinite number. You just keep forgiving. And then he says in verse 23, he says, therefore the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his servants. When he began to settle, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. 10,000 talents back then, a whole bunch of money, okay? Maybe we'll just put a figure. Say you owe him $5 million, just to make it a big number. And since he could not pay, his master ordered him to be sold with his wife and children and all that he had, and payment to be made. So the servant fell on his knees, imploring him, have patience with me and I will pay you everything. I mean, that's a pretty big claim. What if you owed somebody $5 million, you had no job, you had no money left over? He said, give me a little more time and I'll, that's usually what you tell the mob boss when he's going to take you out to, dump you in the river with your cement, overshoes, like that. But anyway, so have patience with me and I'll pay you everything. And out of pity for him, the master of that servant released him and forgave him the debt. So that's pretty good. He goes, okay, forget it. I'll just write off the $5 million. But when that same servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. And 100 denarii compared to 10,000 talents is a little bit of money, okay? And he said, let's see, owed him 100 denarii, and seizing him, he began to choke him, saying, pay what you owe. Remember, this is the guy who already got forgiven the debt, the whole bunch of debt. So his fellow servant fell down and pleaded with him, have patience with me and I will pay you. He refused and went and put him in prison until he should pay the debt. When his fellow servants saw what had taken place, they were greatly distressed, and they went and reported to their master all that had taken place. Then his master summoned him and said to him, "You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you pleaded with me. And should not you have had mercy on your fellow servant as I had mercy on you?" And in anger, his master delivered him to the jailers until he should pay all of his debt. Remember, this is the debt that he'd already forgiven him. Like that. And verse 35 says, So also my heavenly Father will do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brother from your heart. That's pretty tough stuff. Now, here's a couple of things. One, this is an answer to Peter asking, how many times should I forgive? It's not just Jesus picking a story out, picking a story out of the air just because, well, I got invited to this banquet to speak, so I have to have something to, so he's answering Peter's question, who's already heard about the forgiveness, before. But here's the strength. Now, again, remember, it's a parable. Okay, we don't want to make doctrines out of parables like that. But in this, this is something that he already forgave and that now he's taking back. And I don't think we have a doctrinal position on it. Were you going to say something, Bud? Go ahead. Well, that's why we have bankruptcy courts today. Because people used to get thrown into prison, and prison was hopeless because how are you going to pay your debt? Making your 35 cents an hour making license plates, or I don't know what they did, but chariot plates, like that. I don't know how they do it, but that's it's just the idea. It's the punishment. You took out a debt, you're not paying the debt. I am unforgiving, therefore you're going to jail. Joe.
No, it's like purgatory. In other words, your relatives got to buy you out.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, but I think that Jesus is using that large sum of money to just show you owe a debt that you can't pay.
That large sum of money at the current gold rate today, which is about 1,800, but they calculated it when it was 20 or 1,200 an ounce. Would have been 13,200,000,000.
13 billion? Yeah.
13 billion.
Yeah. It's the point is we don't realize the debt that we owe Jesus. Deborah.
It's in payable.
12 cents an hour for making the license.
Oh, there you go. Did you claim it on your taxes? No. Now, Pastor midweek brought me a thing out of the large catechism about owing the debt. Do you remember that? Do you want to talk about that? What you took it that Luther said? You can get the microphone there, or you can come up and do it. Yeah, I do. I have it somewhere. Hang on. No, I got it in here. I just don't know where what do we do with? I got it. Here it is. There it is. Because this is interesting because people have to wrestle with this, and even though what he's going to say doesn't say it in the Bible, it is the principle that you would gather out of the Bible.
So right before this, it talks about our hearts being right with our relationship with God, and so forgiving, being forgiven, that's all about our heart, our relationship with God. So when we pass the peace after receiving God's forgiveness, we're sharing the peace, really the forgiveness that Jesus came to bring with one another. So that's some of what's going on during worship. And so this in the large catechism, he writes, "There is here attached a necessary yet comforting addition, as we forgive." So we may not think that's comforting. We think, well, we're not very good at forgiving, so I'm in big trouble. But he writes, there's a comforting addition, as we forgive. So he has promised that we shall be sure that everything is forgiven and pardoned in the way that we also forgive our neighbor. So when Jesus in his Sermon on the Mount is telling us to forgive, teaching the Lord's Prayer, forgive, forgive, forgive. That's what he made us to be, people who forgive, people that know the grace of a very generous king, a very generous forgiver. And so we do forgive. So he said, just as we daily sin much against God, and yet he forgives everything through grace, so we too must ever forgive our neighbor who does us injury, violence, and wrong, shows malice towards us, and so on. If therefore you do not forgive, then you do not think that God forgives you. And he references the parable of the unforgiving sermon that the servant that Gene was just talking about. But if you forgive, you have this comfort and assurance that you are forgiven in heaven. This is not because of your forgiving, for God forgives freely and without condition, out of pure grace, because he has so promised, as the gospel teaches. But God says this in order that he may establish forgiveness as our confirmation and assurance, as a sign alongside of the promise, which agrees with this prayer in Luke 6:37, forgive and you will be forgiven. Therefore, Christ also repeats it soon after the Lord's Prayer and says in Matthew 6:14, for if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you, and so on. So it's not to be the Lord's Prayer that we're in big trouble because we're so bad at forgiving, but as we forgive, we find comfort to say, yeah, God's forgiven me. And so that's the comfort that we're truly loved and forgiven as well. So any questions? It's tough verses because we tend to think of it as a lot of law, right? That we have to forgive. But in the parable, the guy that had the $1 billion debt, he didn't deserve to be forgiven. We don't deserve to be forgiven. And yet we're going to take someone that owes us, hurt our feelings, did something wrong against us. We're going to go choke them and not forgive them. And it just doesn't, it's not right. And so that's what's being pointed out here.
That verse 15, though, is certainly strong.
Which one's 15? Oh, if you don't forgive someone from your heart, then you're not forgiven.
That's the sting in the tail.
Yeah, yeah. But we're created to be forgiving people. And so and we talked about this a little bit last week, when we forgive, it doesn't mean that someone has to accept our forgiveness or asks or say they're sorry in order to be forgiven either. We could still forgive. Forgiveness is from us. It doesn't depend on anyone else.
It's as much for us as it is for someone.
Yeah, it's for us as much as for Julie.
You gotta let go of it or go behind it.
Yeah.
Is there really any person or situation that you would want to give up eternal love for? You're not worth it. I mean, anyone that does something, they're not worth it. It's not worth not giving them. And I was telling Bible study ladies, I have read this book about forgiving people. And if you can, even if you don't want to say it, but say, Lord, please bless so-and-so. Please, and then force yourself to say it. You don't want to say it. But as you say it more and more, you'll find that, your heart changes and you're able to forgive the person. But I thought it was an interesting tweak. It was ask the Lord to bless that person. But it's very hard to say the person. But you do want to say it because they're not worth it. Why would you give up your eternal life or anything? Better individual. And I know there's some very awful things that people do, but you need to wait again through eternal life.
Good. Yeah, definitely. Deacon, you had something.
A personal incident, I was conducting a funeral down in India here about 2 years ago, I guess. And a dear friend, and while I was there, a man who used to work for me as a deputy sheriff years before, like 40 years before, 20 years before, at least, but a long time before. And he came to, can I see you after the funeral? Sure. And so he came up to me, we got together up in the field beside a car out there by the cemetery, and he said, I'm asking for your forgiveness. What for? And he said, well, you've been eating at me for it was 40 years. You've been eating at me for 40 years. He says, I lied to you right to your face. We went out on strike. You sat me down in your office, asked me, did you go out? And I said, no. I lied to you knowingly, right up front. He says, this has troubled me for 40 years. And I said, yes, I forgive you. He was just ecstatic. But it's forgiving is so necessary, so important.
So receiving forgiveness is freeing, and forgiving is freeing as well.
Yeah.
I know, our human sinful nature is hold a grudge, get even, things like that. And I think there was something, the expression that if you hold a grudge and you just keep thinking about that person again, it's like you're eating poison and you're hoping the other person dies. Because it's tearing you apart when you fail to forgive. So that person has power over you when in fact they probably aren't thinking anything about it. It's ourselves, and it is freeing as we forgive. As that guy was hearing forgiveness, we have that same feeling, hearing God's forgiveness, and then because of his grace, we're able to forgive.
So saying I forgive your sorry ass isn't the right way to do it.
Maybe not in those exact words. No. Andy has something.
Not sure about that. Artie just gave me this one on the phone and said, remember, when you forgive, you heal. When you let go, you grow.
No.
Mhm. That's good. Anything else?
Very good, thank you. Okay. Wait, anyway, so, back to the part of, I'm gonna throw you back in jail. I wasn't gonna throw you in jail. I think the point Jesus is trying to make, based on everything we just discussed, is that if you can't forgive, maybe you never received your forgiveness. And you keep yourself in jail. You keep yourself under the thumb. You keep yourself in that position that you were trying to get yourself out of, but you never received it properly. And so whether you're forgiven or not, if you don't realize you're forgiven, it's like you're not forgiven. You still carry that, that guilt around. But anyway, I thought that it was interesting because that was, like I said, in answer to Peter's question, who never got it the first two times Jesus, talked about it. So, Deacon.
Point of information, we still have debtors' prisons in a sense. In California, we do. I'm sure they do here too. They're not called that, but we call them when I was commander in jail. We call them civil prisoners. They had to be separated from everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
Real pain in the mind, but jailers. But there were people, men or women, who failed to pay child support, and they went to jail, and they weren't released until it was satisfied. They're very much like this, and the family, if they wanted them out of jail, they had to go pay this.
Yeah.
Everything
Pay
they
it
had
off.
to do before they could be out.
Yeah.
Same thing, we're doing it today.
Yeah.
Pay the indulgence.
Yeah, but it goes back to the same thing Bud was asking about, you get thrown in jail, how you supposed to, supposed to pay it off. So it is a difficult, it is a difficult thing. Okay, so let's move on for that. If we go up to or down to verse 16. So Jesus is still, in chapter 6, I'm sorry. back to the Sermon on the Mount. So Jesus, so he gives all of that stuff. Okay. And that's pretty heavy. You'd think that the disciples are walking, because remember, he's given that speech to the disciples. They're probably walking around up on top of that mountain with a cloud over their head. But he's still on the mountain. He's still talking in his red letters, teaching with authority and continuing, that rabbi, you heard it said, I say kind of thing. And he says in verse 16, and when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces, that their fasting may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. Which, so here's the thing. So it says, and when you fast, that sounds like we're expected to fast. I fast every day between meals. But I am fasting right now till I get home and have lunch. No, but then it says when you fast, he doesn't say, hey, I want you guys to start fasting. Let me tell you why, or stuff like that. I mean, they know there's fasts throughout the Old Testament and stuff like that. So, it's expected. And then the thing is, what do we know about fasting? I mean, that's an open question. I don't know much about fasting other than you don't eat and you make yourself miserable. Well, because we're not trained that way. I don't know. Did anybody ever go through a period, maybe you were brought up that way, that you fasted on certain days? And, it used to be like for Yom Kippur, with the Jews, Leviticus 16, is that you didn't eat anything from sunrise to sunrise to sunset, sunset to sunrise, or whatever, which way it goes, you didn't eat. Now, if you read like the things in the way the Jews would celebrate or observe Yom Kippur, it's, well, you don't eat unless you have these ailments or, whatever it is. They make all these exceptions, so everybody still ends up by eating. For the Muslims, for Ramadan, they fast, I think, during the day. Like while you're at work, you fast. So I mean, it's not like a 24-hour fast. I don't know that the rules on fasting in the Bible are all that detailed. Dennis.
In my church where I grew up, back in Minnesota, on the days that we would have communion, we didn't eat until we had partaken of Holy Communion. Nothing in the morning, nothing for breakfast, nothing. But that was something we always did.
Yeah.
I never really understood it, but I was just a kid.
Eastern Orthodox do that. I don't know if I think Roman Catholics do it also, is that you go to confession the night before, and that starts your fast, and that the Eucharist is you're breaking the fast. Right. So some of those, now, if you talk to most of the Roman Catholics or Eastern Orthodox who do it, they probably don't know why, other than it's just the way we do it. Were you gonna say something, Joe?
Yeah, the latter part of this, which says, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father in secret. It's just like what he said about prayer.
Right.
And so it kind of leads to the concept that whatever you're doing to the glory of God, do it because it's from your heart and you want to do it,
Right.
not because you want somebody else to see it.
Right. And that's why he says, apparently, when he says that, not to be seen by others, don't disfigure your faces, like, oh, I'm so hungry, and well, it's like Lent, people, let me tell you what I'm giving up for Lent. Yeah, and then they go through their, list, and nobody asked. So, yeah, so we do those things so that we seem holier than the other people. Deborah.
fasting in the evening, and when I wake up in the morning, I'm pretty hungry, and I feel so much more energetic during the day. By doing eating it at
Right.
nighttime.
But you do that for health reasons. A lot of people do that for health reasons. I mean, they'll fast I've known people, they fast one day a week, they just drink coffee, and they do it to kind of cleanse out their, body for a day, just not make their digestive stuff have to, work all the time. But this is for a more holy, holy reason like that. But yeah, that'd be something we ought to look into, at least find out what we're missing. So who here fasts? Does anybody here fast? You fast? Other than between meals?
You have to be discriminating fast. For example, I always pick gefilte fish. I always fast.
That's what I always say about temptation. I can resist temptation. Nobody can get me to eat anchovies on a pizza. That's not a temptation for, not a temptation for me.
Fasting,
Yeah, you wave a little chocolate chip ice cream in front of me and I have an issue.
Modern day fasting is just prior to having your blood test taken.
That's right. Yeah, no, no, that's what I'm saying. See, we all know about fasting. We don't know about it for the holy reason. Pastor, when you went through seminary, did they talk about fasting at all? Or see, it's like it's a non-subject, but it seems like, at least in Bible times, it seemed to be a deal, and I don't know. But anyway, but Jesus said, when you fast. So that's something that we need to. Now, here's another thing. I might have it on the next. So I've got on the next note there, look healthy and alert when you're fasting. In fact, we should all be able to say we're fasting right now. I mean, that we're actually doing a real fast, but nobody would know by being able to look at it. We look good, we look alert, we're doing our regular, stuff. And that's what he's, that's what he's saying there. And then, it said in verse 17, it says, but when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face. But at the end of 16, it said, truly I say to you, they have received their reward. What is it we're expecting out of fasting? He's saying that, if everybody knows they're fasting and you go, oh, poor Deborah, she's fasting today. I feel so bad for her. She's so holy. And here we're having barbecue today. No, but see, if she were doing it for that reason, to get the attention, she's already got her reward. But what is the reward that we're supposed to see? It doesn't say.
It's a right relationship with God.
Right. I'm sure that's what it is.
If we expect something from what we do, then our reason is for the wrong purpose.
Yeah. No. You got it. He says you're fasting in verse 18. He says your fasting may not be seen by others. Oh, wait, and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees it in secret will reward you. And again, like Joe says, probably just that being right with God. That's the reward in itself. I know that I am obedient. I know that I'm in God's favor. I'm not in God's favor like God likes me better than you. The old Tommy Smothers, thing, mom always liked you best, or things like that. But then I'm in his favor because I'm in his will. I'm doing what he has asked us to do. I may not understand why I'm doing it, other than we've been told to do it. Yeah. And like I said, there's not really much in there that says how to do it, other than you take the word at its face value of fast means you don't eat, you don't drink, you don't. I guess I better read up on it, just to make sure if one of these days I do it right. So, but anyway, so,
Jews
what's that?
on the Sabbath,
What's that?
Jews said on the Sabbath,
No,
that's not a matter of fact.
no. Okay.
Just don't do any work.
Yeah, you just don't do any work, and you don't do You know, even the do any work is probably more should be say, you don't do any work for money. I mean, so you don't do your job, you don't, you know, because obviously there's a lot of things you do. I guess you could clean house or, you know, because a lot of it's, you don't go outside the house to go do those things. You go to, you know, shul, you know, you go to the synagogue for worship and you go home and stuff like that. But fasting is not a part of it. So, Dennis,
Yeah, my notes in the Bible on that one, brother, Jesus does not command his disciples to discontinue acts of piety such as fasting, indicating that they do.
Right.
That's standard.
Yeah.
Probably a norm.
yeah, no, that's the thing. He's not, you know, there's a lot of things, you know, that we don't do because they're not a part of the new covenant, but fasting is not one of them. So in verses 19 through 21, lay up your treasures in heaven. You know, now this one gets a little sticky. Now he's going to start talking about my money. Pastor beat him to the punch though today. You know, oh yeah. So yeah, he's talking about my stuff, and he says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." What's the difference between treasures on earth and treasures in heaven? I mean, are they the same thing?
Temporary,
What's that? What'd you say, Andy?
temporary, right, here.
Yeah, you know, the way we guard, have you ever gone to the dump? Gone to the junkyard? No, you do this, you know, you go to the dump or junkyard, all of those things were coveted by people. People just had to have them. You know, that refrigerator you see in the dump, or the old automobile you see in the junkyard that's all rusted out, you know, that Dave Jensen would have bought, rebuilt, and turned into a fortune, you know. But no, but all of those things were prized items. They were coveted. People would lie, cheat, and steal, you know, to get them. You know, people would neglect their families to earn enough money to get them. And there they are in the, you know, there they are in the dump. You know, I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but we could look around our garage and our storage areas and stuff like that and see all the things that we've accumulated that we just store. How many people here have had a storage unit? Yeah, we have so much stuff, we can't even keep it in our house. You know, I mean, and I've had several storage units. I mean, you know, different places we live. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, the point being is that is storing up your treasure, you know, storing your treasures here on earth. And what did it say? Where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in to steal. You have your storage unit, you put a lock on it, right? Why'd you put a lock on it? I'm not gonna look at that. So I probably want, how many times do we use the stuff we stored for years? You know, maybe it'd be better if we left the lock off and somebody hauled it away for us. You know? Yeah. No, I mean, you know, like I say, that just kind of speaks, right to the base. Says, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break into steal. So here's the thing.
There will be no storage building.
Hey, and what town has more storage units than we do here in Havasu? You know, I've got my boat, I got my, you know, $250,000 boat that I'm going to use 6 times a year, and I pay for a storage place for it. Yeah. So anyway, so hear about the treasures on earth or on heaven. You know, this might be a bit goofy, but if you were stuck on a desert island, okay, that was doomed for destruction, you just knew the volcano was going to blow next month, what would you work on? Would you work on your hut or would you work on your boat? Yeah, wouldn't you? I mean, you work on your boat. But think about Gilligan's Island. You know, I mean, they spent the whole TV series working on their hut, working on their property, working on all their stuff. The professor could invent anything, but he couldn't figure out how to make the boat run. Couldn't figure out how to patch up the hole in the side. Couldn't figure out how to make it run. So they were stuck just living in their present island life that had no external value or existential value or anything, when they could have maybe done something else. And that's what we need to look at. Are we working on our hut down here on earth, or are we working on our path to get, out of here? So it's something to, something to think about.
Yeah.
All right. So it says, so where your treasure is, there is where your heart will be. So where's your heart today?
That
You know?
Wells Fargo.
Pardon?
That Wells Fargo.
Oh, Wells Fargo. No, we do. We think about, where that next check's coming from, our 401k, or this and our that, and that gives us the security. And while we're busy with that, and I think we can all admit it, I admit it, we don't think enough about God and what he has promised us to be able to trust in him. Now, it doesn't mean you want to be bad stewards. You don't want to become a burden to other, people. I can say, well, I'm going to give all my money away, and then I'm going to become dependent on you guys to provide for me. Yeah, that's not good either.
You are in trouble.
Hey, remember, this is on recording. I will be sending her the link. So anyway, so where's your heart today? What does God want from you? What does God want from us?
He wants us to love.
I say all this stuff, just so you'll go home and you'll think about it and look it up, or, search it to see. I'm sorry, what'd you say, Mary?
He wants us to love him
Wants us to love him, yeah.
and trust in him and know that.
Wants us
he
to
will
trust,
provide for
right.
us and not to.
Yeah, if you read the 10 Commandments, the first 3 or 4 of the 10 Commandments, you'll see in there that he wants your heart, he wants your mouth, and he wants your ears. He wants you to love him. He wants you to, honor him, respect him, whatever the words were there. He wants your mouth. He wants you to talk to other people about him. And he wants your ears. He wants you to listen to him, be guided, by him. That's where our treasures, should be, because our treasures are up there. So he says in the next set of passages here. Now this is all kind of a wild one. He says, the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is that? How great is that darkness? Okay. Anybody got a offhand thought on what he's talking about there? Which way does the light go? He says, which way, what did he say? The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. I mean, is your eye what receives the light that makes your body healthy? Is light what goes out, what I can see in all of you? Doesn't say which way the light goes. I know I overthink these things. Yes, sir.
In the notes here,
Yeah.
the eye of the lamp, in Jesus' day, people believed that light shone out from the body through the eye. Healthy refers to spiritual health, producing abominable eye, full of light, such an eye reads the whole person is healthy and generous. And then in 6:23, a morally bad eye is stingy. Of light in view and darkness, such a person may see physically, but is in total spiritual darkness.
Yeah, well, and that may be an application that we can give it. I don't know that that's the meaning of it. I mean, this may have been some kind of a idiom or saying back in those days that we can't relate to. Because again, it said, the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. That sounds like the light's coming in, like you're able to receive, whatever spiritual meaning that light is, you're able to receive it and it helps you. But if your eye's dark, you're not receiving the things of the Spirit. Yeah, it's a difficult one. I like to chalk it up to as, hey, it's the saying they had back then and it never transferred down here.
We look at someone and they look at you with their eye, and you look at their eye, that's what they see.
Yeah.
If it's healthy, if it's a good health, you're gonna see it.
Yeah.
Say, a smile sometimes never reaches the eye, but if it does reach the
Yeah,
eye. then you
yeah.
got it.
No, it could be. I mean, yeah. Could be. I don't have a,
Matt Dillon.
okay. Wait, which Matt Dillon? Marshall Dillon or the actor Matt Dillon? Okay. You gotta make sure.
It says his smile never was lit.
Yeah, so anyway, so there's something there. I'm sure that they understood it. I'm sure it's obvious to us. It is better to have good light than to have darkness, however you do it. Serving two masters. Let's see, that's verse 24. Lost my page here. Yeah, there it is. He says in verse 24, you cannot serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. So the thing is here is the notice that he says no one can serve two masters. How many of us have tried to prove Jesus wrong? That one, I mean, come on. Let me win the lottery. Let me show you what I can do for you, Lord. However we do it. I mean, we just think that we can get around. We are the one who can beat the statement of no one can serve, the two masters.
They just weren't good at multitasking in order to.
Yeah. So, let's see. That's to do not be angry. Anyway, so, and what are the two masters? He makes it very clear, God and money. It's not anything else. If it's not the actual money, it's how you get the money. Or if it's not the actual money, it's what the money can buy me. If it's not the actual money, it's the status that the money and power, can give me, but it's all around the money. It's all around the money. And what happens is as the money goes up, the God goes down, in value. Like that. So. Okay, let's see if we can do this in a couple of minutes here. Do not be anxious. Therefore, I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, what you will drink, nor about your body. What you will put on, is not life more than food and the body more than clothing? Yeah. Is there more than just what we eat, drink, and wear? I mean, what do we mostly say when we get up in the morning? What am I going to have for breakfast? What am I going to wear today? So, and then people worry about stuff like that. Even this part about, what to eat, etc. It's not too far removed from where he said, give us this day our daily bread. And we said, what we're saying is when we pray that is, I trust you, Lord. but then he goes right into the people that are anxious. And trust me, in this world, it's hard not to be anxious about stuff. I mean, it's a hard, cruel world, out there, and you don't know how a lot of things you don't know how you're supposed to, how you're not supposed to worry. He goes, look at the birds in the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not more valuable than they? So he's not saying that you won't have problems, sickness and homelessness and all that, but he's promising care, for people. He's promising to care for people. I have a note here in my notes that says, have you ever seen a bird with pockets? Does that mean kangaroos are unsure of their existence? Yeah, I mean, all of creation, God takes care of. I watch the quails and the bunnies in my backyard, like that, but they can hear my sprinklers start to come on. And they're over the fence and where you got the wells around the plants, and they're there drinking. They lay in there when it's cooler, from the damp and from the shade from the bushes, or the quail they just sit and they peck around at the, in the little gravelly, it's all there for them. They didn't say, hey, we got to go to Smith's today and pick up a bag of our quail food. How many quail foods do we need today? They don't do that stuff. And Jesus is pretty perceptive in, in knowing that. And which of you we'll just read through this. And which of you by being anxious can add a single hour to his span of life? And you can't. You can try to eat healthy. You can try to, work out and do all the stuff, but then you see the people that do who die young. For in Southern California anyway, for the old Alpha Beta markets, they had I forget what his name was, but he used to be the assistant for Chef Roy somebody. Big fat chef. And this guy, Denny somebody. Anyway, you have a thin, fit guy, he used to do the commercials for Alpha Beta and stuff like that. He dropped dead about mid-50s. Big Chef Roy, lived forever. Jim Fixx, the runner, wrote the book on running. Died in his mid-50s. Yeah. Now that doesn't mean nobody go out and have breakfast this morning. Go to the gym instead. Deborah told me she went back to the gym yesterday. Okay, see?
See, that just proves my idiot. Only the good die young. The rest is gonna be here forever.
Yeah, really. Deborah.
Is by diet supplements.
Yeah.
They kill a lot of athletes.
Yeah.
Diets.
Yeah. And why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow, how they neither toil or spin. I want you all to worry about your clothes a little bit before you show up next Sunday, okay? I don't want anybody saying I couldn't find anything to wear, so I just showed up in my birthday suit. What's that? Yeah.
Goes along with the King's new outfit, right?
Yeah, really. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all of his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is alive and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? Therefore, do not be anxious, saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? For the Gentiles seek after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows what you need, and that you need them all. Now, here's the key verse. And this is a tough one. We'll start here next week. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. We'll do that next week, because there's a lot in that one, phrase. Like, first of all, what does it mean to seek God's kingdom and his righteousness? And what is that promise about all things will be added to you? Yeah. I pray, God, let me live to be 100. I don't guarantee he's going to listen to that and let me live to 100. But if I'm, what is it? So what is that conditional part of seek God and his, and his righteousness? But we'll start there. Therefore, do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the days in its own trouble. And what it's saying is, you don't need to worry about tomorrow's troubles. They're going to be there waiting for you. When you cross into tomorrow, they're going to be waiting for you. So it doesn't do you any good to worry about them today. Trust me, I'm no better at this than anybody else here. That's hard rock mining. When you try to figure out what Jesus meant. And then you look at the disciples' reactions. Remember, we're in Matthew 6, and you got to go all the way to the crucifixion, and you're going to watch these guys just stumble and question. And, when Jesus says, now I'm going to go to Jerusalem and I will die. And Peter says, no, you won't. See, he's not even believing Jesus when Jesus talks after all of this, all of this. So, Joe.
Yeah, any military strategist will tell you that the battle plan only lasts until the battle starts. Okay, and so the same thing, your plan for tomorrow only lasts until tomorrow starts, and then everything changes.
Yeah.
So there's no.
I like Mike Tyson's definition of that better. Everyone has a plan till they get socked in the nose. Or get punched in the nose. You got this big old plan. What you're gonna do, how you're gonna fight, and what your strategy is. And the first time you get that wham right in the middle of the face, wait a minute, maybe my plan's not working, or maybe I need to change my plan, or what? Or bite your ear. Anyway, okay, well, that's good enough. Let me, oh, yeah, Harold. Because we started, I think the very first verse that we did said not to be like the hypocrites, and we often play the hypocrites. We get our minds straight, we know what we're gonna, and then we don't live up to what it is that we started 15 minutes ago. So he's a hypocrite, and we're all hypocrites in that, in that manner. So